in collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous on mycyradio.eu.
Coming up on the programme this week, Let's Do It Cyprus.
Thousands of volunteers are going out and are collecting the garbage.
Could voter apathy change the demographic of the next European Parliament?
Turnout is on a downward slide, with voters' numbers having fallen at every European election since 1979.
Women take action to defend the right to abortion in Europe.
Making abortion illegal is really putting women's lives in danger.
And Alexander Downer speaks frankly to the press before stepping down as the UN Special Advisor on Cyprus.
The responsibility for an agreement in Cyprus rests with the leaders and the people of Cyprus.
Well, this Sunday sees another Let's Do It Cyprus. We're part of the greater global clean-up because Let's Do It World is, of course, an organisation that's been going for quite some time. It's the second year that Cyprus has joined in, and with me is Stella Mikhail, who is one of the organisers. Stella, thanks for joining me. What exactly do you do on Let's Do It Cyprus?
So in Let's Do It Cyprus, we collect garbage. Thousands of volunteers are going out to the natural areas and are collecting the garbage. We do collect the recyclable material.
So you separate the rubbish from the recyclables.
Yes.
I think last time the organisers went out and mapped areas with the help of the public, areas that needed cleaning up. Have you done that again this year?
This year we haven't done it, but with the help of the people again, we do have photos and places that are full of rubbish, and we know the points that we are going to clean.
So you've already registered the teams.
Yes.
And they'll be going out on Sunday. Have you given them specific areas to go to then, or do they just go to the area they've found themselves? And then how do you collect the rubbish that they collect? Because it's in very out-of-the-way places sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, we choose places that volunteers can go. And they collect the garbage and they take them on the roads and the streets where the truck can go and collect them.
So you have a truck going round to pick up all the things that are collected.
Yeah.
What were the more unusual items that you collected last year?
Unusual. Some municipalities and communities have collected the tires. They were all over the fields, and that was very sad. Tires, and we saw couches and beds inside the forests, but we couldn't collect them. Only trucks from the government and specialized drivers can collect this garbage.
So you collected a load of rubbish last time. Have you gone back to some of the areas that you cleaned last year to see if people have continued to fly tip and drop rubbish there? Or has the clean-up changed people's view of those areas?
We did visit some places. Fortunately, it was clean. Some of them, though, we couldn't go to every spot to see. We think that people, knowing this campaign, we will raise awareness to not throw the garbage
in the countryside.
Yes.
Okay, as we said, everybody who's officially going has registered, but I'm sure that on Sunday you'd be very happy if anybody listening to this got a group of friends together and did a bit of a clean-up in their area. If they do that, what do? Just take the rubbish home with them and dispose of it as they would normally? Or do you have a contact number you can give out where if they find particularly large amounts, maybe they could be added onto your schedule for collecting?
We said that to every volunteer that is registered, if they see some garbage, tires and...
big items, yeah.
Yes. To inform us on the number 7000 90, 55. So to know where the big items are, to inform the municipalities or...
So 7,09055, the number to call if people know there are areas with a lot of rubbish, and everybody out on Sunday. From what time to what time are you doing this?
We starting at 10 in the morning until 1.
10 till 1 on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Let's Do It Cyprus. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Online and as a podcast, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
In May, more than 400 million eligible voters living in the EU's 28 member states will choose their representatives for the European Parliament. That is, if they choose to vote, because voters in the EU are increasingly turning their backs on the institution. Now, radical nationalist and anti-EU parties are hoping to cash in on voter apathy, which could change the EU landscape. Nathan Morley reports.
I'm outside the European Commission in Brussels, the so-called political heart of the continent. A few weeks ago, the EU publicity machine based in this building kicked into full swing to try and engage voters to turn out for the elections in 2 months' time. Snappy television adverts have been produced to try and drive home how important it is to get out and vote.
The European Parliament. Act. React. Impact.
However, turnout is on a downward slide, with voters' numbers having fallen at every European election since 1979. And there's plenty of people within this building who are not surprised by that fact. British MEP Daniel Hannan believes that Brussels has hopelessly failed to communicate its relevance to the peoples of the European Union. In his latest video blog, to demonstrate the lack of interest in the elections, he's been asking random voters from across the continent if they recognised any of the likely candidates hoping to succeed Commission President José Manuel Barroso. The public were shown photos of socialist Martin Schulz, Guy Verhofstadt from the Liberals, and the Christian Democrat Jean-Claude Juncker.
Do you know who this man is?
No.
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 No, I don't think so.
He's the socialist candidate. A little bit, maybe?
A little bit. I'm not sure, but...
Martin Schulz. Does that mean anything to you?
No.
No, not understand. And I don't know him.
Do you recognise this man?
No. It's French.
Luxembourgeois. Jean-Claude Juncker.
No.
Doesn't say me, no.
No.
The subject of the public being oblivious as to the identity of their Euro MEPs is a common theme in the popular media, and Carol Lanoux from the Centre for European Policy Studies isn't surprised it's used. He says it's hard for the public to love an institution which is on the whole a technocratic entity.
Doesn't surprise me to some extent, because even if we have done a lot to prevent a next financial crisis, these things are extremely technical. On the core, the EU is seen to be far too much as a technical construct, not sufficiently a construct with which you can fall in love with. It's a technocratic thing. It's a rational issue all the time. Let's say we do this to tackle that problem. It's not something which stirs kind of an emotion that you can fall in love with. The emotion is rather against it, rather than in favor of it. And probably the best way to explain it now is to look to Ukraine and to say what happened in Ukraine. Apparently there people have emotions, can be killed to be part of Europe. We in Europe apparently don't see this.
While some Eurocrats may be worried about keeping their jobs, a more serious concern is that the expected low turnout could have unpleasant consequences for the makeup of the future Parliament and the political spectrum across Europe. Euroactive is an online news website dealing with EU issues. Its senior editor, Georgi Gotev, says that the lower turnout will make it easier for more radical parties to do well.
There will be lots of parties, some of them nationalist, secessionist, some of them anti-European, and as a result we will have a different situation in the European Parliament, where the mainstream political forces, they will need to enter in coalition. That's because there will be too many anti-Europeans, and then the pro-Europeans will have to unite to face the anti-Europeans and to be able to push through the legislative agenda and broadly speaking, the European agenda.
Leaders in Europe have been sending the message that the worst of the economic and financial crisis is over and that 2014 will be a year of recovery. Guntram Wolff, an economist and the director of Bruegel, the European think tank, says that what is clear is that the debt crisis will now share the centre stage with growing unemployment.
We have a large part of the young unemployed in southern Europe that do not have a job and that have no prospect of finding a job in the next 2 years in their own countries. Some of them may migrate and find jobs elsewhere, but in their own countries they are unlikely to find jobs. And this is what I would call a lost generation. So people that have entered the labor market, tried to enter the labor market, but then haven't had a job for 4, 5, 6 years at a very young age. These people are marked for their life, also their whole family planning and so on.
Georgi Gotev agrees and points to the European southern belt, that's Greece, Portugal, Spain, Italy and Croatia, where roughly 1 in 2 young people are without a job. Altogether, more than 5 million young Europeans are currently out of work.
The biggest problem remains unemployment. A lot of Europeans are afraid of losing their jobs or struggle to find the jobs, and especially young people are in difficulty. Too many young people are unable to find a job. I think crisis is not an issue, but unemployment remains very much the issue.
One thing is for sure, recent polls show that voters want whoever enters this building after the elections to do more for them in their everyday lives. Nathan Morley for the Cyprus News Digest in Brussels.
My Body, My Decisions is an event that's happening on Friday, organised by the European Women's Lobby. What's it all about? Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome to the programme the president of the lobby, who is Viviane Teitelbaum. Viviane, thanks for joining us. What does My Body, My Decisions actually mean?
Well, it means that we European women want to raise awareness and really get the attention to the MEPs and to the commissioners at the European level and point out that it's very important that we keep our freedom of choice, that we keep our freedom as such, in fact, regarding our body, regarding everything that concerns women's rights. And therefore, we wanted to have an action that, does a little advocacy on this.
But it's particularly, I think, about the right for women to have abortions, because there is some developments, legal developments within the EU that are going to possibly remove the right of women to have abortions on demand. Is that what you're trying to play for, abortion on demand, or is it a little bit more detailed than that?
Well, what we want to say is that we have now the last years seen in many different countries that the politicians are moving backwards. It's a backlash in terms of health, in terms of sexual and reproductive rights. And so what we really want to do is to keep, it's very funny, but having to say that, but we want to keep things as they are. We don't want to go backwards. It's not even a question of moving forward in terms of gender equality at this point. We want the sexual and reproductive right and right to abortion to be considered as a basic human right and as a crucial matter for gender equality. And as you said, we've seen in many countries, we have 4 countries that are already today not accepting freedom of choice for abortion rights, which is Poland, Ireland, Malta, and Cyprus. And now we have countries like Spain, for instance, where government has accepted wants to reform the law and wants to have this backlash in terms of right of choice for abortion. So,
sorry to interrupt, Viviane. If I'm correct, in Spain they're actually drafting a bill that would only allow abortion in the cases of rape, or if pregnancy poses a serious physical or mental health risk to women. Now, from what I understand, this covers only 8% of the current cases of abortion. What are the other 92% of cases usually based on? It's strange because Spain, of course, being a Catholic country, one would expect the abortion rate to be quite low anyway.
Well, first you have to know that abortion rate is much lower in countries where abortion is legal. That's very important to know. Secondly, abortion can be a decision linked to a period of life where a woman does not want to have children, even if she wants to have children later. It can be a choice for economic reasons. It can be a choice because you already have 2 or 3 children and you don't want a third or fourth. It can be many different reasons. It's always a very difficult choice for a woman. So those who advocate and say that, if abortion is legal, then more women will go about this method and so on, is really not knowing the problem that surrounds this choice of abortion. It is always a very difficult choice, but in countries where it is legal, you have centers and planning systems where women go and where they are heard and where they can discuss it. It's not a decision that's made the first time when they go to a center. It's a decision that's being discussed, that's being weighed, and that's being done in very good conditions. So,
okay, but I think you'd agree, Viviane, that at the same time, one doesn't want to see abortion in any way used as a form of birth control, for example. But it's very worrying that in Lithuania, if they pass the bill that is expected to be passed, I think, in a couple of months, then it would be actually a criminal offence to have an abortion with a punishment of up to 3 years in prison. I'm not quite sure where that takes us.
No, exactly. It's a project at this stage, but that's why we really want to go in the streets on Friday and really raise awareness around those countries that are coming up with projects that really will put women's lives in danger, because that's what it's all about. Making abortion illegal is really putting women's life in danger.
Sorry to interrupt again, but has anybody also thought of the fact that if women are forced to carry to full term a child that for whatever reason, and I don't think it's for us to condemn or otherwise, but for whatever reason they don't want that child, are we condemning those unborn children to a possible life of misery because they will be resented and rejected by certainly their mother and possibly both parents?
Well, I don't know. Really, I'm really in favor of choice and for sexual and reproductive rights and for freedom of choice. But I don't know if that would be always the case. I think that some people probably would not want it, but then when the child is there, would welcome it. I'm not sure it would be condemning the child. Maybe that's going a little bit far. On the other hand, I really think that not allowing for the choice is putting health in danger, the mother's health in danger, is probably putting the family under a lot of stress and a lot of very difficult conditions. So I would turn it around and look at the problematic in different aspects. I don't have statistics about how welcome children that are forced to arrive in a family, if they are happy and how much happier or unhappier they would be than in another family. But it's really putting a lot of stress on the parents, on the family itself, and yes, then on the children, of course. But I think it's mainly a problem of really respecting gender equality, respecting women's lives, respecting women's choices. I think that's what it's about, really.
Well, you're going to have, I know, some fascinating, I'm sure, stories from individual women who've suffered the consequences of being denied an abortion, and that will be fascinating too. You're gathering at 3 o'clock, I think, in the Place de Luxembourg in Brussels, and it will go on for very nearly an hour. You're hoping, obviously, to change minds here, but can you actually do anything about these draft legislations in countries like Spain and Lithuania?
Well, the EWL is, the largest umbrella organization in Europe. We represent national coordinations in 30 countries, and we represent over 2,000 organizations. So yes, we think that as we work in all those different countries, if we put some pressure, if we raise awareness, then maybe it can make a difference. And it also shows that women do care about those issues, and that they're not going to be led to a situation where they cannot control their own body anymore, where they cannot control their lives anymore. And I think it's important that MEPs know that everybody knows that at 7 weeks away from the elections, that people in the European Union would be able to make choices based also on how their MEPs vote and how they vote in the European Parliament and the stand they take.
So you're wanting actually people who are going to vote in the European elections to check with the candidates they may be thinking of voting for what their position is on the right to freedom of choice when it comes to abortion.
Exactly. Yes.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Viviane. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you to everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that was Viviane Teitelbaum, who is the president of the European Women's Lobby in Brussels.
Keep up to date with events and news in Cyprus with the Cyprus News Digest. You can stream it live on mycyradio.eu, listen again on the Cyprus Mail website, or download the podcast to your phone or tablet and listen anytime, anywhere.
Time constraints last week meant we could only include a small part of Alexander Downer's press conference, held as he prepared to step down as the UN Secretary-General's Special Advisor on Cyprus. One of the questions asked at the conference was about the role of the United Nations in the Cyprus negotiations, and whether, after 40 years without a solution, it should perhaps rethink its approach.
I think that the thing about the United Nations is it does its best in very difficult circumstances, much more difficult than Cyprus, to think through the issues and understand the politics, but to work with the two sides. I mean, we are not, when we come into these sort of situations in the United Nations, just spear throwers for a particular cause. We have to work with both sides. And believe me, that's not easy when some people on one side or the other, well, actually, it's true in both sides. It's not just true on the Greek Cypriot side, it's true on the Turkish Cypriot side as well. Some people think you should just be a spear thrower for their side. And, well, you can't communicate with the two sides and work with the two sides if you're going to get involved in that sort of media activity. It's not all the special advisors and special representatives who have been here over the years, and somebody will correct me, but I think there are maybe something like 24 of them in 40 years. It's not they who have failed. Ultimately, the responsibility for success depends on the Cypriot people and the Cypriot leaders themselves. I mean, you can't argue on the one hand that you want a Cypriot-owned and Cypriot-led process, but on the other, when you don't reach agreement, how come the UN didn't fix this for us? You can't have both arguments. I mean, the fact is this is a Cypriot-owned and Cypriot-led process, so ultimately it's the leaders of Cyprus and the people who have to make the agreement. So the Secretary-General Special Advisor and or Special Representatives, so whatever they're called, they are not going to come here and ex cathedra say this is an agreement. In fact, when it comes to responsibility, the UN's responsibility is to help, but the responsibility for an agreement in Cyprus rests with the leaders and the people of Cyprus. And it is they who must make an agreement and confirm an agreement. It's not the United Nations which is going to come here and impose one upon them.
And with new talks now underway, how much convergence was there?
I would say on the basis of what I know about the positions of the two sides, this is a deal that can be done. Not that it will be done or that it won't be done, we don't know, but that it can be done. So neither side has a position which, in my view, I think has the potential to destroy the talks. I think they are thinking about each other's positions on the whole suite of issues, and a deal here can be done. And I very much hope it will be. Maybe it won't, but I know what you're thinking. We've heard all this 1,000 times before. Great question. 40 years, we've had people from the UN talking up this process and being hopeful about it. The truth is there are days when you can feel more hopeful than others, and if you're in a position like mine, you're not likely to even do the job. You shouldn't do the job if you think the whole thing is going to end up as a catastrophe. Now, I'm leaving the job now, so you might think this is an opportunity for me to tell you that I think the whole thing is going to end up as a catastrophe. Well, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you and straight with you and say that I think a deal can be done.
Then there was the question of his rapport with the two leaders. It's been widely reported that Mr. Downer and President Anastasiades have a somewhat turbulent relationship.
I overall have, and I've known him pretty much since I came here, right from the very beginning, and I know him very well. And as we were reflecting yesterday, we have built up a very good friendship. It's true, we have had our differences. There's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, we've had a very good friendship, and I know that that friendship will continue long after my involvement with the Cyprus issue. So, you know, I think he is a man who can make an agreement happen here. I think he's a very effective politician. Myself, that would be as a politician of long standing. My judgment is that let me say of him, I think he's a very seasoned and a very intelligent and able politician. So I think the international community should put a store in him as somebody who can, with Dr. Erolu, of course, achieve an agreement here. And let me take the opportunity of saying how much I've also enjoyed working with Dr. Erolu. He's a good politician as well. Has a very good sense of his own community, very good feel for his community, he's very good with people. That's an important skill for a politician, and I think he can carry his community with him as well. So I think, you've got a combination of good leaders here, and look, I've had my arguments with them. Of course I have also with Dr. Erolu. I've had plenty of arguments with him over the years. But, you wouldn't be doing your job if you just wanted to tell everybody what they wanted to hear. That's a very easy way to do a job, just tell people what they want to hear. But it normally isn't a very constructive way to operate.
The outgoing UN Special Advisor on Cyprus, Alexander Downer. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.